I'm sneaking up on you. Everything you don't want shown?
No, I'll make sure.
Hi. Hello, Talia.
What? Oh, hi. Are you going already?
I am. I said I was sneaking up on you.
Oh, I didn't know that meant you were.
You have progressed a lot in this time. Whoa. Hello, wave back. I'm waving back.
This is
That is.
something I'm working on right now. So.
Wait. You got a lot further than that.
Mm-hmm. I've actually redrawn like a section of the wing shape, like twice, until I got to a point where it felt like there was enough variation in the rhythm that it didn't look too intentional.
I know. Whoa. I think it's whoa too, Robert.
I like that kind of the nouveau kind of pattern of organic repetition rather than biomechanical. But although I do use kind of some of the biomechanical form shape stuff too. I tend to go more towards the natural organic repetition rather than mechanical.
Sorry, I put my...
That will not stay
That's
up
not
there.
going to stay. Oh, it's not going to stay up there. Sorry, my drink. Let's see if I can get it.
You did it all?
Yeah, I'm just getting closer.
I just thought how this would kind of also fit the definition of feathers and scales.
Oh, that's bigger than 11 by 14 now, isn't it?
A little bit, maybe. But,
Oh, thank you for all the compliments.
so this is more of an example of like the line art kind of stuff that I do. When I do like a more formal process, so I started off with a sketch that sort of looked like these kind of things, where there's just an outline. This is like a warm-up page.
There we go. Yeah.
This is like a warm-up page. And this was stuff I did last night to kind of warm and get ready for doing this. So I did like all these different kinds of, I'll show you. I have like 4 or 5 of these that I'll play with, and all of them end up being ideas that I'll use somewhere else at some point. You know?
And I apologize to everybody listening, but if there's a way that I can translate comments, I haven't figured it out yet. So I apologize
if we don't answer, yeah.
If I don't answer because I am ignorant in other languages, so I.
Yeah. So these are what I did last night as kind of warm-up drawings.
Ooh.
You know, like I said, some of these will find their way. See, that's kind of similar to the more the quadrupedal kind of thing up here.
That you can't pick up.
So this one. So, but,
These are awesome.
you know, like, not everything will get used, but some things just suggest ideas and bits of pieces of information that I'll bring into another piece. And sometimes tentacles happen for some reason. I don't know why. It's just a thing.
Are they attached to anything? No?
Not yet, but they might be at some point. It's just about finding rhythms that are pleasing to look at, that don't look too fabricated, too contrived.
Right.
So I figured, I like to.
Ooh, I like him.
Yeah. More of one of those greyhound shapes. I like greyhound figure kind of type forms and things. And then once I get past this stage, I have to like calm my head down to get ready for work, and I'll do like a bit of spot rendering just to start, because I did this to play. Basically, when I say to play, I meant to get ready, basically to get my head in the right space to work on stuff like this.
So what are we talking about? Lovecraft. Very Lovecraftian.
I love Lovecraft. At least I love the mythos, the world generation of Lovecraft. So that's not a huge surprise in terms of what I do. But and I haven't yet determined exactly what this guy is, but I left kind of this vacant space right here, and I was playing with different types of figure overlays, with this piece of Duralar that I could, play with there. I actually even did a little cat.
A little cat?
Yeah, because sometimes it's really kind of cool in the middle of everything to take a right angle. and go in a direction that is a little bit surprising. You know, like, you know, it just depends on the piece, but and whether or not it fits with the narrative of the piece, right?
Right.
So, but there's a lot of
Has
options.
the narrative come up yet? Have you come up with a
Not
narrative
entirely, no. It's more of a celestial type form in terms of
yet? Like
the
this
story behind the
right here.
character. Yeah. So it's a celestial thing. Whenever I think of biblical and mythological lore, I think that many things that are described in those books aren't exactly what they're supposed to look like. It's just the best words that people had at the time to describe them.
Yes.
So there's no reason to think that, you know.
All the detail must take forever. Actually, no.
Well, you know.
You have to start drawing,
It
though,
just
and-
it does depend on.
Ooh, is that going to be solidified or not? I like that.
No, this is going to be light. I'm probably going to build a gradation outside.
No, I mean, I like how this breaks apart.
Oh, that's yeah. I'm going to keep it kind of smoky,
like that.
but much of it is.
It doesn't actually take you that long.
It
hate
doesn't
to
take as
say
long.
that.
It doesn't take as long as you would think. Like I did 90% of this probably last night, but that's after having done a little bit of a sketch, and it's been sitting on my desk while I'm doing other things, and I glance at it every
Well,
now
I
and
mean,
then.
this part was done.
This bit was
This-
done here, and pretty much everything. I think some of this might have been done, and then pretty much everything from here over. So
Right.
about 70% of it was done last
What's
night.
your pencil? You got the Corinne Dash, right?
This is a Coran Dash 3.2 or 3mm fixed pencil 3. My hand's shaking. Yeah,
That's because you're talking to people.
yeah. Well, they scare me. But and
You scare 'em.
these are
Everybody
these are
scares 'em.
actually kind of these fat leads like this are hard to sharpen. So I ended up taking a Staedtler and I took a jeweler's file and filed out the inside a little bit to get the lead into it.
Yeah, you've talked
But
about
that's a
that
dicey
before.
thing because you can ruin 3 of these before you get the file perfect.
Correctly, right?
So yeah, and then I also use when I'm doing line art. It just makes more sense to use a lead holder than a wood pencil because you're working with the fine point a lot, and this is more line art than it is straight graph. I could ink
Right.
this probably, and it would look pretty good as an inked piece, I think, because it's mostly line art. When you get into here, it's when you start getting into that like visual noise that you see in like old black and white etchings and stuff. So that would probably work. I haven't done pen and ink in a long time though.
No, you haven't. Since like the early years.
I started off with mostly pen and ink. I started-
Because they're easy to reproduce.
yeah, easy.
Well, I mean, they're less expensive to reproduce.
Well, yeah, everything was easy to reproduce when we started because we did it really crappy. So we'd basically make copies of things. And so well, no, it's true.
That's what we get
we did
aboard.
what we knew how to do at the time.
Right, exactly. So, and thank you to everyone who's giving smiley faces and all the very nice compliments that you guys are giving them.
So,
They think you have amazing skills.
well, I appreciate it. I do. It's a lot of times it may or may not take a long time to do, but one of the things that I do is I sort of have a subconscious plan, and I just kind of turn my forebrain off and just let myself fall into finding those shapes as it goes along. Like I could if I wanted to, I could take this to a fully rendered pencil, in which case all of these shapes would be. I would lose some of these shapes because I would go back in and destroy some of them because some of it would fade into shadow.
Maybe,
But
I
then
kinda
it would
like the way
but then
it is.
it would lose the line art quality. And I like drawing shape based work, but I also like it when things look like an old etching. Whether it's a tin plate or whatever.
Yes, this is Vicky. I'm his wife. Someone asked who I was. Yeah, Yes, the kids are out gaming right now.
Yeah, and.
Someone asked who is your favorite artist?
Oh, my favorite? I have a lot of favorites, but in terms of doing line art, I like looking at like Franklin Booth and those guys because what they did, what was very interesting to me was that even in the still spaces in the drawings that they had, there was a visual noise that sort of equates to the noise in a good black and white photograph. Mm-hmm. And that's something I learned, like that if you have a flat black space, when you're building shapes, that's cool. But if you're doing line art, that noise keeps people engaged in the negative areas.
Right.
Like even Franklin Booth, if he were doing clouds, there would even be like striations in the clouds that would have noise. And he never did solid
Pattern within the clouds.
And he never did solid blacks. But he's one of my favorite guys for line art. Of course, Bernie Wrightson was sort of a contemporary guy that did that.
Aaron Horkey.
Certainly Aaron Horkey.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's
Yes.
like the master of
And
such
we
things.
are, Andre, he's done this like 3 Saturdays in a row. So we just don't know what we're going to talk about till we walk in the room, really,
Right.
usually.
Right.
So maybe next Saturday you will see us too.
Yeah, we'll do it again. And I'll do some of these things more than once. So if people miss them on one, can catch them on a different one. So,
Right.
So,
All right. Now, all the pencil questions you guys you can always find it under our facts page on the website, which is AlanWilliamsStudios.com. But he has a crayon dash fixed pencil right now
yeah.
with
This-
the lead holders right now, but he likes Tombow Mono 100s.
Yeah. And this is a 2mm, and I use the 2mm and 3mm. I use pretty much every size
All
pencil.
different kinds of
Yeah.
sizes and everything.
But, and one of the things that I was going to mention this.
Shoot. Sorry, I forgot to turn off my sound. So
One of the things I do with some of these things that I wanted to mention was when you have stuff like this, it can start to look like a cutout unless you go in and break up some of your edges and blend them into the shapes behind them a little bit. You know, it's that whole lost edge thing. So even in black and white, I find that it's valuable to do that. You know, I mean, a lot of black and white line art is very crisply delineated, and it's beautiful if that's, you know, your intention in the piece. But I like kind of bouncing back and forth between the I guess Dore is one of the guys that, like, you look at their work, and I really love the old school
Yes.
etchings of like Gustave Dore. I think that's probably obvious, but well, at least it's obvious that I like it, not that I could do it. But
Yeah, and Joe Beth, you know what, the thing that he's sitting in, this is actually it's supposed to paint on, is a painting cradle.
yeah, if you flip it over, the other side is gessoed for painting, so you could paint directly on it. But I just at one point decided to turn it this way and put a board across it.
It's like a 1/4 inch 1x4 or something
Yeah,
like that. Or,
this is
no,
just-
1/4x4.
Yeah, and this is just hot glue strips to keep the board from sliding, so
Right.
it sticks where I put it. And I ran a hot glue strip around it too.
So anything within that, I think that one's 14x18 or something.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an easy way to get one of those cradle. It's just a cradle board.
But one of the things somebody had asked before is how do you keep things from looking like a cutout? And one of the ways is to alias your line. And I borrow that term from 3D because 3D programs will use anti-aliasing, in which will go through and blur pixels along the edge of something, and that'll resolve it into the background. And so that's kind of what you do. That's kind of the whole lost line thing, is blurring certain edges into the background.
Yes.
And more or less for me, it's more of a matter of intuition and what I like to see. So there's probably a mathematical way of doing it precisely, but I just use a lot of artistic license and just
do
play
it.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, I'm sorry I can't read comments that are in a different language. Like I said, if Instagram has something to translate comments, then I have not yet found it, which happens a lot with me. But
If we get the comment in an email, we'll translate it and send back the response
right,
as
you
fast
can always
as we can.
email us. At me. It's usually easier to email me, Victoria LTW, or go to the website Alan Williams Studio.
Yeah. So at this stage, what I'm doing for mostly, like, I can spend pretty much the rest of the night tickling edges and defining certain lines, and at some point I may decide to change whatever plane something is on and drop the entire value back and then redefine it. Many times I've gotten to a stage in a piece like this where I go through and I go, well, I need this area to be really dark, and I'll just cover up what I've drawn. And people they don't like to cover up stuff that they've drawn in terms of wasting time. But I never feel like it's wasted because the implication of detail usually sits back there anyway when I cover it. And I mean, there are plenty of people out there that can draw real simple, beautiful shapes and make that work. But I really like digging into the lines and playing with them, and it's sort of like, this is sort of meditation for me. It's just, most of the time, it's how I keep from going crazy.
Oh,
And-
he said good afternoon. Someone translated it for us.
Oh, thank you.
Good afternoon. Yes, he uses erasers a lot.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I have all kinds.
Some people call them rubber, so it's an eraser, yeah.
This is an abrasive eraser. This doesn't really work good on paper as well as it does on the
Clayboard.
the clayboard stuff that I do. It works really well on the clayboard, but the paper it just sort of chews through. So most of the time, I'm using kneaded erasers or the small Tombow Mono Zeros, which are a soft rubber eraser that work really well. And the thing is with paper, if you're trying to get something going, I don't know, many people don't really know that for kneaded erasers, some people do, but you're supposed to lift the graphite up first like that,
Tap it up.
right? And then you go back and take it off. What's left? And then you can get back to much wider area. See, it's almost completely gone. Because if you just scrub with an eraser, you can end up pushing graphite into the
Right.
paper and it
And
smears
the
everything.
Clayboard. Oh, don't worry about not speaking English. That's all I speak. So
Yeah.
the fact that you guys can speak more than one language, I admire that. So, and I
Yeah.
appreciate you guys watching anyway.
Yeah.
How does the clayboard behave differently than the paper? Very differently.
It's harder to lay down subtle graphite in the beginning until you get really used to the fact that it's working again. It's a little bit like that Yupo paper or Yupo paper, and that it bites the pencil pretty hard. So even a light line looks really dark on it. But I've gotten to a point where I draw as much with the eraser with clayboard. The clayboard stuff, I actually think maybe I draw 60 to 70% more with the eraser than I do on anything else. And that's where the subtlety can come in, is when you're erasing shapes back into it. It's a more difficult medium to, like, especially the way that I do it with the water and the graphite. It's more difficult to plan the drawing beforehand, unless you do a sketch, put the graphite down, and then either project or use a piece of paper and lay the sketch out on top of it.
Right.
Just because it's like this, I'll work back into this, but it's already dark, right? So this is going to be this will be a shape piece. It'll be more based on just finding out essential shapes and then rendering those. It'll have less detail in it, but there'll be a lot of background movement that's in the graphite. I don't know if you can see it. That'll start to come out once I start erasing into it.
Right.
You know.
Oh yeah,
So-
that's hidden there.
Right, and I'll show you. It's in this bigger piece here that you can see better. And this is.
Can you guys hear the dogs? The neighbors' dogs?
This is the same kind of board. It's just a bigger one, and I've already started playing with picking out lines and shapes in it. But I'm actually probably going to use this as a background, and then I'll draw on top of this, and then let these things bleed back into whatever it is that's going to go on top, and let it kind of
there we go.
give movement into the still spaces,
I
so to
see.
speak. You know,
Yes.
so.
Yes. The pencil he's using, the holder he's using is a Crayon Dash fixed pencil.
This one
And
is a 2mm 77, fixed pencil 77. This one is a 3mm Crayon Dash fixed pencil 3. So,
Yeah.
and for the 2mm, I just use the regular Staedtler lead pointers.
No, this piece might go off to a gallery or it might stay with me. I do all the matting, framing, anything. So he has a lot of pieces that are left into sketchbooks, and like we will be going to Monsterpalooza in April. And so in the next couple weeks, all I'll be doing is pulling pieces out that I feel like are fully finished or almost finished, and he'll fight with me and I'll get it. I'll either frame them up or they'll be set in a portfolio for sale. Someone asked what we do with the pieces. Sorry, they asked whether they stayed in the whether they stay in the sketchbooks or
No, I can actually.
what we do for presentation.
This is normal, regular Strathmore 400 series medium surface drawing paper. This pad's like about a $5 pad, so it's not one of the most expensive pads. But the paper is a really good tooth, and it has a perforation under. You can barely see it. It goes right up to here. Right, so if I want, I can pull this out and just continue to and work on it like that. Or if I want, I could also take this and do the very traumatic thing of sealing it to a board and painting on top of it. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't.
Sometimes it doesn't. Usually
Yeah.
we don't do that.
I don't do that very often
Yeah.
since I started using this stuff.
Yeah.
Since I started using the clay board, though.
Yes. Let's see. Then you work over the eraser drawing with oil. Sometimes he does work
Yeah.
over it with oil. Sometimes he'll take this and get it to the finished point and seal it with a mixture of matte medium and water. You either brush it on. If you brush it on, probably not for this. You would spray it on.
For a drawing that's on matte paper, since the shiny parts of it distract when it's on matte, I'll spray matte medium on the whole thing because then it makes the entire surface matte.
Right.
If
But then you
if
can-
it's on the shiny board and the surface is shiny, then I'll gloss varnish it and it makes the entire surface shiny, so
Right.
that there's no distraction in that respect either.
Right.
So it's usually when there's areas of matte.
And then after that, you can work back into it with oils. Yes.
Yeah, you can pretty much work back on any of that stuff with oil. So even with the resin, that I started putting resin over the clay board, I mean, people oil paint on top of resin all the time too. You can do that. I haven't really done that yet because I just like it as a varnish on top of the drawing, and mainly I like it because it pretty much guarantees that. I mean, there's some question as to whether or not resin will eventually turn yellow. The art resin that I use claims a good archival quality, but I kind of like age in a drawing at some point. You know, I like looking at older drawings when they've started to show the character of their age. So I don't really mind it if they started to yellow a little bit. That just
Right.
means that they've been alive for a while. You know?
Jesse said thank you for sharing your techniques.
Oh, no problem.
Taking time to do this.
This one is not a very dynamic technique. It's more of a you know,
burn.
slowly sanding down pencil leads with the
Yes.
sandpaper that basically
I often wake up and it's like, oh, look, it's halfway done. It's like, isn't it the cobbler's elves that would come
Oh,
in?
yeah.
Shoes, they would come in and do all the shoes.
shoemaker's elf. Here,
Shoemaker's elves, yeah.
don't go anywhere. Point at that. I'll show you the piece I was working on during the demo last week.
Oh, that's right. She was on EDO. Oh, no. The fawn.
No, it was, well, the fawn was here, but also the one that I was doing when I was showing the wash technique with washing graphite. This is the one that I was working on.
No, it wasn't actually. It was the fawn.
This one?
That was the one because you had 5 of them up.
Oh, okay.
Remember,
Well,
this is the one, it was in the middle.
all right. Well, okay. Well, that's a good example of what it looks like when you add oil to it on top of it. This one was a little different. I tried something different. It wasn't as successful as some of them can be.
What you say.
But
I think it's fine.
yeah. But this one, if you can see the detail,
Oh, yeah.
worked out really well. And most of that detail was suggested by the pattern of. I actually used a sponge and started dabbing the graphite onto it, and I got a really like ancient-looking weathered paper texture pattern on top of the.
Yes, this is the one you were playing with.
Yeah. This is the one I was working on last year. Yeah. But so.
So I have a stack of questions here. People are asking, so I have to go back some.
Okay. Good. And this one
Oh.
actually has varnish on it, so you can see it's like.
Well, that one has it has the resin on it, right?
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
The resin varnish. So.
All right, I'm going back. Do you work digital too? Yes, you do.
Yes, yeah. Especially doing contract work and when I do some concept work, I've done digital work. I do some ZBrush sculpting and paint over in ZBrush and Photoshop post stuff. Also, I also do a lot of regular pencil work for concept art, but then it also has to be scanned in and formatted and presented in a way that makes directors want to look at it.
Right.
You know, so
you'll do anything that gets the job. Well,
pretty much. I don't really have any
problems
problems with using digital or pencil or traditional. It just depends on what you need at the time, and what job you're working on. So,
do you have any artists that influence you?
yeah,
Everybody.
tons. We were just talking about this earlier.
Well, I threw them. They're under the facts page too. You can always go on the website.
But quickly, in old school guys, I love Franklin Booth, a little bit newer guy, Bernie Wrightson for pen and ink line art. I like Waterhouse and of course Beksinski has probably influenced my work more than it should because I love it so much.
Right.
But I love his organic quality. Giger too, but I actually think Giger and Beksinski are very similar. It's just that Giger went towards the biomechanical and Beksinski went towards the more organic aspects of what. Yeah.
Someone asked. The fawn was that's just graphite.
That's just graphite. There's no oil in that one.
Graphite and pencil.
Yeah.
When you were letting it dry and keeping the drying patterns, turned out green.
What now?
I don't know. I missed the part of the question up here.
Turned out great. Thank you. Yeah.
Great. Oh my gosh.
Not
I haven't
really.
even had a.
But
He doesn't prepare the clay board for anything. Once he just puts the graphite down on with water, which that was in not last week's, but the week before,
Yeah.
the 10th. Do you use reference images?
I do when I want anything that is believable. If I want something in it like a real person, I try to find real reference for it.
Right? Or you shoot a lot of photography.
I do. I shoot a lot of photos. If I want something more stylized, if it's, of course, I don't have to use reference. I mean, obviously, this doesn't have any reference in it, but I definitely have used reference before. It's one of those things where if you want realism, if the piece calls for it, you're better served by finding something to look at. So that because reality is always a little bit further along than maybe the imagination in terms of creating realism. In terms of creating art, you don't have to, right? You can stylize it if you want. You can make it, take it in any direction you want to. But there are definitely pieces where I want to interject the aspect of realism.
Right.
You
have folders and folders. When he works with a model, he'll keep all of the photos, and then you just use something from like 7 or 8 years ago or something of
right. And sometimes I'll have the photos. I'll do a photo shoot with something in mind, and sometimes I'll just I'll do a photo shoot of somebody that just poses well, and the model themselves will inspire a piece. I love figurative work. I always have. I like people who are very physically expressive.
Right.
But I also like those poses that aren't posed, the ones that are sort of in between when people are trying to pose.
Right.
Those tend to be the natural ones. Yeah, they tend to be the most compelling ones. I like introspective pieces.
Right.
And that's when they're usually thinking about, what am I going to do next? And that's when they're usually posing the best.
Right. Right.
But
do you create your own reference, or sometimes you find it in the internet? Mostly, your internet reference is mostly just for inspiration.
I use what I'll do is use stuff I see online to see how people approach things and say, I don't like appropriating anyone's work. I like transformation as opposed to appropriation.
Those are the two words: transformation rather than appropriation.
If you
we
see
have that
somebody,
discussion all the time.
Yeah, because if you see somebody's work you like, you don't want to outright copy it. I mean, you can let it influence you, but transform it into something of yourself.
Right.
Because people see what they did, and they want to see what's you. They don't want to see your version of them. They want to see what's you.
Right.
And so I like transformation. So yeah, I will let other people, that's why I have Pinterest up all the time. I've got this feed that has like sculpture and art and everything, I've got like dozens of boards of my own that are just hidden.
Yeah.
But like this is the one that's public, and it's just stuff that I like that inspires me. Other artists' work. And I don't intend to ever copy any of these, but I look at it and I go, I love the level of line in that contrasting the negative space, for instance. And that's sort of one of the things that I try to bring into something that I'm like this. I see something like that and I don't want to emulate it. I want to emulate the level of it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I like the gestures and things. I like sculpture. I started sculpting recently too, just so you know. This was the original, and this is my first attempt to cast something. So
very cool.
But yeah, my big thing lately has been you need to, or at least I would, if anybody asks me, which I don't usually volunteer this to people because I think they should find their own decision, make their own decisions about things. But if you ask me, my opinion is it always should be transformation, never appropriation.
Right.
So.
Someone said they could, with all the Knuckles and Beksinski's things, they could see that coming through in some of your work.
Yeah, that's interesting because if you notice, there's the guys who are influenced by Beksinski's. One of the first things I think sometimes we tend to do is we dig into those the knuckle shapes because they're so striking, and it sort of imprints on your subconscious, and you play with it and see what you can do, and try to make it your own thing in the end.
Right.
But yeah, you can definitely see lineage. There's nothing wrong with having a lineage, a history in your art. But everybody attempts to bring it to their own place.
Right. That's a Korean Dash fixed pencil, 77. But
So.
Wait, I was reading something.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Did you say he did not use water and graphite at the start of this piece? That's for the other powdered graphite
Like, yeah.
images, right?
That stuff looks more like this. So it has more shape language in it. This has more line language in it. Eventually, if you work into graphite enough, it becomes more shape, right? But they start kind of in two different areas. This kind of starts with shape, and this starts with line.
Right. Right, exactly. Transformation, never appropriation.
Yep. Well, that's my thing. I mean, I'm very hesitant to ever tell anyone how to approach work. I can only say how I do it, and
You have to kind of figure it out.
right.
It's
Just like I don't tell people how they should be using Facebook because it's a free program that everyone has, and you do whatever you damn well want to.
right.
You know.
Scroll past.
yeah.
I don't like it.
But I will give, if people ask, I'll tell them what I think.
Right.
But everybody finds their own way of doing things. So
Well, that's the point, though. If they ask you for your
Right.
opinion,
Yeah.
and they want your opinion of
yeah.
a piece of work or something like that,
Yeah.
then of course you would.
But I don't like what I'm getting to is I don't like setting anything up and saying this is a rule. I'm like, you may look at the way that I do things and go and just
There
go,
is no rules in what you
right,
do.
and I don't like. I actually find it one of the few things I do find irritating online is when people say this is how you should always approach this particular subject or this. You should always approach design based on shape. Well, that's how people who start off in industrial design learn, and it's a beautiful way of working.
Right.
But I don't work that way.
No, you don't. You don't.
And I've done a lot of design jobs, but I just come at it from a different direction, So there's room, though. There's room for whatever direction you can come at it, as long as you make it work for yourself.
Mm-hmm. We asked he purchased. They asked what we're doing, how we're getting the graphite powder, and we purchased Generals or Cretacolor, which
Yeah.
is that would
I use
graphite
the-
powder, and
the
it's not
yeah.
the water soluble graphite. It's actually graphite powder that he takes a wet sponge. The live feed from the 10th of February, you can see him actually working with it. He just dips it in water and slops it on there.
For some reason, I don't really enjoy the feel of water-soluble graphite. I don't know why it's different than the regular graphite, because regular graphite's pretty soluble in water. I'm not sure what the difference is, but
Yeah, but you can feel if there's more humidity in the room on your paper.
this is true.
So
I can tell I can usually tell if it's really high humidity that the paper fibers feel different.
Yes.
The paper is more absorbent or less absorbent depending on what direction
yes.
the moisture is in a room that day. But that's just because I've been doing this particular part of it for 30 years.
Yes, that is true.
You don't have to know that to be able to draw, by the way.
Right.
It doesn't really do you that much good because it's really only something you notice when you're working. I actually do a lot of work that only I notice.
It's true. It is. He'll go, look what I did. And I'll go, it looks like it's the same as it did 3 hours ago.
Yeah.
Well, now I can tell. But before I couldn't. No, this, Jim asked, is that resin you're covering the drawing with? Yes. Right now he's covering the drawings with resin, poured resin. He did that. I think I threw a video up 2 days ago or something. But he has used Gamar varnish. Gamar, am I right?
No, that Gamvar is what I've used for oil.
For oil paintings,
and
right.
before, when I was like this drawing is coated with clear coat, like an acrylic clear coat. It's like basically it's acrylic gloss varnish in a spray can.
Are you going to resin him or not?
I could, because then it would have that kind of it would lift the surface and bounce more light around,
Right.
Which is why I like the resin, by the way. And plus it sort of like encases the piece in plastic.
So I don't have to use glass.
Right. And
because if I'm framing a pencil piece, it needs to be protected by something, but I can't have it laying against the glass, so then I have to use spacers on it, and then we just started to play with the clear coat now.
Yeah, and
And then you started playing with the resin, because Stephanie was playing with the resin, or not playing with it, she was using the resin.
If you're new to the feed, this is a piece that has resin on it. So there's actually another layer of light bouncing around in it, which is kind of why people varnish oil paintings too. It keeps it looking glossy and in a sense wet, and I think it adds a dimension of light even to graphite. So.
Oh yeah.
But
He has actually painted. You can go through the feed, although it's been a while. You have to pull out your oils soon. He asked, have you ever used silkscreen ink powder to add color to your art? No.
Silkscreen ink powder.
No,
No, I haven't.
Don't give him any ideas either. He
Oh,
doesn't need.
too late.
He's just started playing with resin.
Yeah. That's
Doesn't
fine.
need to get silkscreen ink powder right yet.
I might need to.
No, how about oils?
Yeah, I love oil.
Oils.
So
Acrylic gouache for the color.
yeah, I can do an underpainting with acrylic or acryla, which is an acrylic kind of, but it acts like gouache, and then oil on top of that, which is normally what I've done in the past.
Right.
So-
Do you polish the resin after coating? No.
You usually don't have to. I mean, if you want to paint on top of the resin, you have to sand it and make it matte again, and then paint on top of it, and then you pour resin on top of that again once it's dry, and it goes all back to glossy again. Mm-hmm. So, but the point of the art resin is that when it dries, it looks like like this piece of glass that's merged with the surface of your piece.
Mm-hmm. Watercolor pencils. Dun dun dun.
Oh,
we
well,
have some of those.
no,
he doesn't.
that falls along the lines of the other thing. I have nothing. I think people do beautiful work with them. I just don't generally like the feel of the water soluble pencils. There's water soluble graphite.
We have a very expensive set that the kids probably play with now.
No, those are just regular color pencils. Those are
That's
polychromos, regular
right.
color
They play
pencils.
with pull out the expensive color pencils, and I have a heart attack. No, you can't take those to school.
Well, they're very respectful of them. They don't ever break them or anything. So, my daughter comes in and sometimes will add a mark to my work, and I always let her because I think it's important that she respects it, but she also knows that it's something that has to be done by your hand, and so she'll come in and she'll pick a place where I think she thinks it's safe, and she'll add a line and I'll say, okay, well, that's going to be there forever, and so she's very, very considering when she lays down a mark. She helped me with one of my larger paintings too. Oh, hey, Renee. Renee French is in the list here, and she does some beautiful work too. If you haven't seen her work, she does these incredibly refined characters that just have more personality than most of the people you meet walking down the street.
That's true.
And I'm not trying to be insulting to anybody. I'm just trying to come up with a really decent compliment. But yeah, at this stage, it's mostly noodling. But it all adds up. Like, every piece of art is an aggregation of details, So,
What kind of leads do you use?
these are 6B. They're also not the easiest things to find.
Usually when I get something through...
They're 6B Caran d'Ache leads.
Yeah.
For this, and these are 4B Mitsubishi Hayoni leads. So this has got a nice black binder.
Mitsubishi Ioni, you get a jet pen.
This comes from Jet Pens.
Jet Pens.
These you have to order these are Swiss. They're called Swiss Made, I think, is the company or whatever.
Isn't that the one you got from Wisconsin though?
I got these from this place called Wet Paint in Wisconsin. But you can find them online. But these are not cheap. This is about a $18 pack. There were 6 leads in it. Mm-hmm. And I can, when I'm drawing, I'll go through one of these leads a day, an entire one.
Yes.
But they're very nice, and they lay down a really good line, and they're smooth, and they're not chalky. So
Renee should not be blushing.
oh no, she's worth more compliments than I know how to give.
Right.
So, but here's the sharpener, and I'll pull the lead out, and I've retooled it with a jeweler's file so that it will work for this 3B lead, this 3mm lead. But I just broke the lead.
You broke it.
See, I was showing off. Hold on. That's just because it's a soft lead, though, and I was getting a little too excited.
Years ago, you used to work with
I started working with the hardest leads, 6H, 4H up to 6 and 7H, and then I realized how boring it was to do a completely smooth drawing that looks, there's no texture in it, there's no modulation of surface. See, now that's what it looks like when I get it sharp.
Ooh, that's sharp.
Mm-hmm.
So sharp, you've stabbed me with it before accidentally.
Yeah, I've done that where you reach across the desk and all my sharpened leads will come back dangling from my hand. So.
Where is Wet Paint in Wisconsin? Isn't that much? Is it Wisconsin or Minnesota?
It's in that tri-state area. What is that? Is that
The tri-state area is New York, New Jersey.
No, that's not what I meant.
Your accent sounds like Philly or Baltimore. No.
I have a fairly neutral accent, I think, but it's up in the northern, it's around
No, I think it was Minnesota.
Minnesota,
where he got
yeah, I
it.
think
It was
you're right.
he looked online and there was a big old charge. And he's like, I found leads and it was cheaper than buying them from overseas because you had to
Yeah.
buy them from UK for a while.
Yeah, but if you Google wet paint, the store, it'll take you right to it. I think there's only one in the country, really. But
Music. He listened to a lot of different kinds.
I do. I listen to everything from classical to that really dark, depressing. Like there's some. I don't even know what it would be listed as a genre, but I listen to Celtic music. I listen to
Yeah, and we don't usually, the music that I have on the videos is
Holly.
Holly's music.
Yeah,
which is
she's-
Holly Mead, Mead, and
Yep.
she's out of Oakland.
Yep, She's
Because she knows she's a composer.
a pianist and a composer. Yep. But sometimes I'll listen to some techno stuff and some glitch and dub and all that.
Everything, right.
Just pretty much everything. I like high energy stuff when I'm in the concept phase.
Yes, you can always tell when something's happening, or when you start to paint. There's a particular soundtrack you have.
Yeah, I've been I like a lot.
I'll post that on Patreon.
There's a
I'll
lot
go
of there's a
through
lot
and-
of game soundtracks that are pretty cool to listen to when you're working because they're very epic and they last a long time.
Oh wait, like we've gone 45 minutes. I have to tell someone. You have to. The website is alanwilliamsstudio.com. The, Instagram is I_.com, which all you guys obviously know, and then Twitter is I just draw, and our Patreon is Alan Williams, and I usually stick these up. No, neither of us are from Philly or New Jersey. I was mostly from Ohio, so that's the north.
And I was actually born in Tennessee, but I've lived across the country. I've lived probably in 48 states. My father worked on natural gas pipelines, so I traveled a lot.
Do you ever draw quickly, or are you careful and methodical always?
No, earlier I was showing these things. When I draw, like a lot of times
Hey, Alessandra.
I'll throw out like these are just random shapes, and I'll do these kinds of things. And actually, I'll show you. Normally, when I draw, if I'm really trying to find shapes, here, I'll do stuff like. All right, so
Oh, you have a sketch?
yeah,
Ah.
so
Filigree stuff, whatever.
yeah. So this is kind of like I'll do this, and they don't have to be precise. This is definitely looking at the shape rhythm rather than like worrying too much about detail. But what's strange is I'll probably follow these lines fairly exactly if I do the piece, right? If I do a piece made from this, like maybe I'll specifically do this or something just to but
You can guess what it looks like.
well, it's
Don't say.
it's obviously a cat. No, it's a bird.
It's a cat.
But I try not to be too.
No,
This is-
there are sketchbooks and sketchbooks and sketchbooks full of sketches like this.
Yeah, but see, this is not. I do this sometimes, and I do this usually when I'm just like, I need to generate a lot of like playful ideas. If I'm what many times when I sit down to draw, I'll sit down and I'll start. Okay, like. I'll basically play with the shadow. I'll go for the shadow side usually of things first.
Oh, there it is. Took me a minute. Renee asked if you use a fixative. Yeah, you use a workable fixative over a regular pencil.
Yeah. Yeah.
Blair fixative is the one you use.
I think they're pretty much most of them are the same.
The same.
Yeah, or at least they are. In my experience.
Just put it on very lightly,
Yeah.
several layers.
So I've got that, and then I'll go back and I like these little edges of these. I guess I call them etching lines, and they're like these little places where you can carve a detail, and see if you carve a detail in the right spot, it makes look like everything is intentional. So it's the same thing with when people used to ask me if I did a lot of stipple, which I don't. But what I do, if I can find that sharpener again.
I think it didn't drop on the floor accidentally.
I don't know where it is.
Wait.
The blue one. Oh, here it is. Wait.
It did fall.
So they would ask me if I do stipple on it. So you can see the texture of the paper there, right? And so if I want to make it look intentionally like, well, I'm going to make this whole thing look like I actually stippled the entire thing, I just find a few places and purposely put a few points in like that. And if I do that in the right places, it makes it look like I did it over the entire thing.
Over
like,
the whole thing.
Yeah. And so essentially, I'm letting the paper do most of the work.
Right, when the darkest area was actually... And some paper that works better with than others.
It has to be a toothy paper.
Right.
You know, it doesn't really work that well on smooth paper to do it that way. But you can make it work, but then you have to do a lot more stippling. and I don't like doing an entire piece in stipple because it doesn't suit my nature to do anything one way all the time.
Or three ways at the same time.
So I'll combine these things and try...
Someone earlier asked how long you've been drawing.
I mean, the literal answer is, you know, since I was 3 or 4. Professionally, since about 1988.
Yes, we're that old.
So, yeah.
Hey, Amy Baker.
Amy Baker Shipley. You have to say her whole name. Amy Baker Shipley.
Amy Baker Art.
Amy Baker Art. Is that what she is on Instagram?
She is.
Amy can handle a pencil, too, by the way.
Yes. So don't think you don't know a lot. It's just that he's been doing it a lot more.
So I just only stippled a few places, but it looks like now that everything is intentional.
Ah, but it's only there in the light part of it.
And if you're doing, you know, a lot of times nailing a black somewhere, like a really dark, makes everything else look more intentional too.
How long do you put your noodles in the microwave?
How long do I put my noodles in the microwave?
He will noodle with a piece until sometimes I sell it right out from under him, or
That's true.
I don't do that very often though.
But see, you know, that's okay. There are, I mean, if you're one who likes to do fast drawings that are expressive and gestural, I love to see that. It's just it doesn't suit my nature, and I've done it. I find myself liking to noodle with things.
Yes.
And I really didn't get into art to do stuff I didn't really enjoy doing, but I love to see other people do it. You know, and I really respect it when I see it done well.
Jake Peck says hi.
Hey, Jake.
We know he's doing good.
So you saw me how I played with things and how I started it, and this is how a lot of my the pieces that I do. And people go, "How are you finding like these really weird shapes?" Well, it's because I'm being kind of haphazard with laying down lines, and I'll just see what happens. Like this might end up being a bird, but it looks like there's going to be something like a descending spiral into a black shape here, so it'll change. So
it could be a skull.
It could be a skull. I don't know.
Horn.
You know, if I want to reticulate it, if I want to say that this has a pattern to it, I can lightly just kind of do something like this, just to establish a repetitive pattern, and then I'll go back and like I'll hit like, you know, you start finding a couple of spots where the pattern lines up. You know,
what kind of movies do you like? Your favorite one favorite movie? That's impossible to say.
I've been watching a lot of really crappy horror movies lately, but I like a lot of. I like horror quite a bit, and I like science fiction and fantasy quite a bit. Obviously, I watched that movie Ritual recently. I thought it was done pretty well. The creature was kind of interesting. That was on Netflix. And I thought they did a pretty good job with it. It surprised me a bit. But
he watches anything and everything.
Yeah, I watched I watched. I mean, you know,
like so much so that I go, I'm going in the other room.
Mega Piranha, which I wouldn't advise. I mean, Mega Piranha. I watch movies that
all of the Blade Runners. At one point, you're like, "There's 9 Blade."
Not Blade Runner. Hellraiser. I didn't realize there's like 9 Hellraiser movies.
9 Hellraisers. All right, wait. We have an important question here.
Yeah, 10 if you count Event Horizon.
Oh God.
What was the question?
Blade says, I'm a junior in high school, and if I've to make a job out of art, do I need to go to college? That's a loaded question.
You need to study. You need to find a way to study what you want to do. And if you go to find a college that teaches what you want to do, there's nothing wrong with it.
You did not. But you were there for about 2 years.
I was in college for a couple of years. If I had to do it over, I'd probably find a designated art school, or I would take it upon myself to find the teachers taught exactly what I wanted to know. The most I've ever learned in terms of art education came from the Illustrators Masterclass.
Oh,
It happens
IMC.
once a year up in Amherst.
You can
And
look up IMC,
Yeah.
Illustration Masterclass, Rebecca Gay.
that's a 1 week long, like a roughly 1 week long situation. And you'll learn as much as a full year of school anywhere else there.
No, we haven't seen Annihilation yet. Then you have to go to the movie theaters. Listen, okay, this is how bad we are. We just saw Jedi like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
The last
I want to see
Jedi.
Annihilation. Somebody told me that it was sort of a...
No, but we just, we never get out to, it takes us a while because we have 2 kids and we have stuff that has to be done on the weekends. So,
Somebody told me that it was a retelling, like a reimagining of A Color Out of Space, which is cool.
yeah, this paper is just Strathmore. He loves Stillman and Byrne Zeta series. It's a beautiful paper you love
Right,
to use.
and that's a smooth paper.
a
And I
different-
love Stonehenge for its tooth. It's
cream
more,
journal
yeah.
paper. Hmm.
So, and I also have worked on the Arches hot press watercolor paper, which is really
And Blade, we're not telling you not to go to college for
Right.
art. It's just you have to kind of find. Alan actually went to a fine art.
I went
college.
I went to Middle Tennessee State University for a few years, and there was some good teachers there. And
But
one
it's
of them
not what you were doing though.
was that they weren't doing the kind of stuff I wanted to do. And one of the teachers told me, he said, "You're already working in the field you want to work in. It would better serve you to just go work in that field than to stay here and do this." And so I took it to heart, and that's what I went and did. But the thing is, what you have to realize about college, about any school really, is that you can have bad teachers, but you've got to be a good student. And if you're a good student, you can learn anywhere. But it's
Right.
on you to figure things out if they're not teaching you what you want to learn.
Right. Right. Really, because you do a lot of when he bought the first Photoshop when it came out in the 90s or something like that. He bought 9 books. I was so livid. I was like, what the hell? But you
Right.
bought like all these different books on Photoshop, and Photoshop when we
I can color correct
Scan
my
it.
own work. I can, if I wanted to print,
color corrects
yeah.
perfectly. It's
I know enough about it. At least I'm not as schooled as somebody who does it. Say at a print shop that color corrects for a living.
yeah.
But I know enough to do it to get to handle my own stuff.
Yes, and we have 5 minutes because it'll be another hour that we've gone. So we're going to wrap it up here in 5 minutes. Remember, our website is alanwilliamsstudio.com. I don't have all of the new stuff up because I haven't gotten it up yet. You can always reach me through the website or at victorialtw@gmail.com.
All right, so that's kind of an example of how I start sometimes with the piece, or I'll play with it. This whole thing started off like with this kind of line, it was just and then I just basically worked back into it and filled in the details and erased it and chased it back and forth until I got to a pleasing series of
Yes.
shapes. And then I realized I wanted a lot of it to have some negative space, so I went back and erased some of it into it. I'm not done with the eraser yet because there's still places that need to be cleaned.
Hello, Stephanie.
But I carved a lot of shapes into it as well.
You totally interrupted my plug too. I was telling them where to find us. Our
sorry.
Patreon, that's all right. Our Patreon is Alan Williams, patreon.com, Alan Williams. We don't have any high tiers for any, it's mostly digital content and videos and stuff. And Christopher asked a very loaded question here that probably is not able to answer. We aren't able to. How do you develop a client base for these kinds of drawings? You just do it after 20 years?
Here's what, the thing is that the kind of stuff like this has happened because the people have seen me. I post a lot. And so the people started, online, started asking me, where can I get this? Is this for sale? And so I developed a sort of a list of people in that respect. And the more visible you are, the more people you're likely to run into that are going to specifically like the kind of work you do, which in this day and age is amazing because to me, it doesn't matter what kind of work you do, as long as you're visible enough and you get out to enough people, you'll find the people that like what you do.
Yes.
And I did art shows, I did contract work, I did some magic work, I did. There was a time when they said, they would tell authors in colleges that they had to, publish or perish, like they do with, I guess they tell scientists that too. They got to publish or perish, get your name out there. So that's what contract work is really good for. And I've been lucky to find highly visible stuff. Like I worked on a lot of films that people like so far, and that helps. being diverse and evolving, letting your style and letting the way you do things evolve helps, because people
Yeah, never get stuck, and because you've been doing it for almost 30 years, and so your style can. You have to. You don't always have to keep the same style, but you have to evolve.
Well, you just have to let yourself find that natural way of working that suits you. And one of the things I guess I did was I felt like if I found the thing that I wanted to do the most, and I liked to do it, that there would be people out there that would like it too, because I'm not so unique that I'm the only person that likes things.
Right. Yeah.
You know? So,
just like this is not what his work looked like 15 years ago.
Oh no.
You know.
No. I was doing more high fantasy, sometimes romantic fantasy, about 15 years ago.
And no, he never takes breaks from drawing. Someone asked if he did.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, when we go on, like we did the short vacation with the kids, you were like, I didn't draw today. It was like a shock. He's like, I didn't draw at all. I just played in the beach.
But it's because I decided that this is like how I calm down. This is how I don't think about the things that sometimes bother me. This is also how I meditate, so to speak. So when I say that I draw all the time, it's not because I think everybody should always have a pencil and be drawing constantly, and that's all you should ever do and don't have a life. I'm not saying that.
Right.
I'm saying that you should do it as much as you need to or have to in order to find what you need out of it.
Yes.
So, like, again, I don't like to tell people exactly what to do, but I'll say that this is what I do.
Right, exactly.
And there are times when so last week there was a day where I was working, but most of it was staring at a piece of paper, and stomping around my studio. So
in the house, he's like, "There's nothing wrong."
Before every major piece that I start working on, I'll probably have a few hours, anywhere from a few hours to a day or two, of being pissed off at myself because I think everything I'm thinking of doing is been done or is not worth doing.
Yeah.
And I have to let myself get over that with almost every piece.
Right.
So if you feel that, and I think a lot of artists feel it, it's a natural thing. And what you have to remember is that even though somebody else may have done something similar to what you're doing, you've never done it, and you're going to bring yourself to it, especially if you're allowing it to transform into the thing that you like the most about what they did.
Right.
So,
so we are going, it's been an hour, it's 10 o'clock, it's Saturday. I suppose Maeve has to go to bed.
So thank you, diehards, for being here and watching this on a Saturday night.
Saturday night. People who don't go out and...
I partied until I got bored with it, and then I started drawing.
No, we didn't.
Well, I didn't really party much.
Okay, you didn't, but I did. No, I'm teasing. All right, find us, our website. Well, you found us here on Instagram. This will be up on the stories, for, 24 hours, because I throw it up there. I know nobody watches the whole thing.
If you have any specific questions, you can email me.
Yes.
Or email Vicky.
It's easier to email us, not on Instagram, just because the messaging on Instagram isn't as easy to deal with. So you can email us through the website at Alan Williams Studio. Hit us on Patreon at patreon.com/Alan Williams. And what else?
Well, just, take everything that here's my big advice. Take everything everybody tells you and find your own way of doing it.
That's right. We don't do everything the only way, the perfect way.
Or one way.
Right. Exactly. So thank you guys for tuning in. I'm glad you guys like the live feeds. And we'll say goodnight.
See you next week.
All right. Bye.
Bye.